Hello, Patreon. As always, thank you for being here. One of the things I am most grateful for is being allowed to do this work, and I certainly wouldn't have been able to do it this year without your help. I'm also grateful to be very near the end of scripting season 2. I do still have about 4 scripts to write before I can get to the editing process, but it is exciting being this close to done. The writing in the second half of the season has continued to be faster and easier than the first half for all the reasons I've talked about before, but it is still writing, and that doesn't come as easy to me as editing does, so I'm really looking forward to the next stage of the process. One reason I find editing much easier than writing is you get to do it from the big picture perspective. When you can step back from something and look at it as a whole thing, it becomes really obvious when certain pieces need to be stated in a different way or a different place or not at all. And writing has a tendency to be the exact opposite of that. In some ways, for me, writing is like becoming a bad storyteller on purpose. Everyone knows what it's like to listen to someone do a bad job of telling a story. You know, they go off on tangents that have nothing to do with the main thing they're trying to say. They realize out loud they forgot some necessary detail, etc. Sometimes people who do this are just bad storytellers, but other times these things happen because a person hasn't told this particular story very many times. Probably this is even the first time they're telling it. And scripting season 2 is literally the first time I'm telling this particular story. Obviously, there are some stories in season 2 I've been sharing in conversations for half my life, but there are so many things I had wrong or never knew about George Jones before researching this season. So even those familiar bits have been placed in an entirely new context for me. This context does continue to evolve as the season takes shape. There are many times where writing for me means forgetting the big picture of the season as a whole in order to focus on moving forward just the one segment of the one episode I'm in. And I'll do this knowing that I'm writing something which may later need to be said in a different way or a different place or not at all. In my experience, this is just part of the process of telling a story for the first time. And I can try to prepare ahead of time, and I always do by making outlines and timelines, placing all the relevant facts, anecdotes, lies, songs, interviews, etc., just in order. And as I've talked about in the past, these are extremely helpful tools, both on the season level and on the episode level. But when it comes time to take all this gathered data and turn it into a functional narrative, you just gotta bite the bullet, become a first-time storyteller, and go in whatever direction the truth leads without really worrying about the big picture too much. This can get messy. This is why movies based on real-life musicians almost always deviate from historical fact. It's just so much easier to make some shit up than it is to stick to the truth. But if you're more interested in uncovering the truth than making a movie, this method is also what shows you the story you're telling. This leads to the epiphanies. Again, it's a lot like a bad storyteller realizing out loud the thing they just said doesn't add up. Then you watch them quickly piece together what must be true and move forward with the story, which they now have a better understanding of. This is exactly what I've been doing for a long time now, and there are certainly things I've learned about this story while telling it for the first time. A lot of stuff in the first half of the season was written without knowing exactly how those threads would be resolved in the second half. And even in the second half of the season, which has been a lot easier to write, there are things I'm still discovering about the story. There are truths which hadn't popped out to me at any previous stage of the process. I couldn't begin to guess how many times this has happened throughout scripting the whole season, but each instance changes the big picture a little bit more. So, when I talk about editing being important to the cohesiveness of the season, ironing out inconsistencies in the narrative voice or character arc or whatever else, this is partly why that's necessary. It's impossible for me to know everything about the story I'm telling for the first time until I get done telling it. But once I am done, it's basically like becoming a time traveler. I get to go back to the beginning and knowing how everything is going to play out, make adjustments accordingly, masking any evidence that I was ever at any point in this process a bad storyteller. So that's sort of what I mean when I say the next part is a lot more fun than the part I've been doing for a while. I do still have some more work to do in this part where I am, and probably a thing or two left to learn about the story, but pretty soon I get to step back and turn all this work I've done into the big picture, which is a really good feeling. As always, I hope this is interesting to most of you, helpful for some of you. I'm still pretty new to talking about writing, and I'm never really sure if I'm doing a good job of it, but I do try. And this is where I'm going to sign off for now. So, everyone, please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you back here next month.